A single institution controls land used by millions of people, yet in one conference hall, that authority was openly questioned by those meant to protect it. What unfolded at the Ingonyama Trust conference was not a routine disagreement wrapped in tradition. It was a rare public moment where traditional leaders, speaking with measured words and controlled emotion, directly challenged King Misuzulu. Beneath the respectful language lay a deeper warning. The system holding land, power, and cultural legitimacy together is under strain, and silence is no longer an option. Before forming an opinion, pause for a second and ask yourself this. When guardians of tradition raise their voices against the very symbol of that tradition, is it rebellion? Or is it a signal that something fundamental is no longer working? The conference began as expected, filled with ceremony, protocol, and the language of unity. Delegates gathered under the shared understanding that the Ingonyama Trust represents more than administration. It represents identity, belonging, and the historical promise that communal land would remain protected under traditional authority. Then the atmosphere shifted. One voice questioned consultation. Another raised concerns about decision-making. Soon, it was clear this was not an isolated complaint, but a shared frustration that had been waiting for the right room. The Ingonyama Trust is often spoken about as if it were symbolic, but its reach is deeply practical. It controls land tenure across vast parts of KwaZulu-Natal, affecting housing, farming, development, and inheritance. Every policy decision touches real lives. That reality is why tension around the trust never stays theoretical for long. When traditional leaders speak about it, they are speaking about their people's daily struggles, not abstract governance models. King Misuzulu did not create this system, but he inherited it at a time when scrutiny is sharper than ever. His reign began amid legal disputes, succession debates, and a public increasingly willing to question traditional institutions. Leadership under those conditions is less about command and more about navigation. Every decision is read not only as policy, but as a statement about the future of tradition itself. What made the conference moment so striking was not anger but restraint. Traditional leaders did not shout. They did not threaten. They spoke with the weight of custodians who feel sidelined. Their message was simple yet heavy. Consultation has weakened, communication has thinned, and respect must flow in more than one direction. In traditional systems, authority has always been relational. When that relationship strains, legitimacy quietly erodes. This is where many misunderstand the nature of loyalty in traditional leadership. Loyalty has never meant blind agreement. Historically, elders advised kings precisely to prevent isolation at the top. Questioning authority was not betrayal, it was protection. The tension seen at the conference reflects a fear that this balance is being lost, replaced by centralized decision-making that feels distant from local realities. Hovering over the entire discussion is the legal history surrounding the Ingonyama Trust. Court rulings, policy challenges, and public debates have already reshaped how the trust is viewed nationally. Even when legal outcomes favor the institution, the process itself changes perception. Authority that once felt unquestionable is now measured against constitutional values, transparency, and accountability. For communities on the ground, these debates translate into rent payments, permits, and uncertainty. Families building homes on land their ancestors occupied for generations now navigate contracts and fees that feel foreign to the original promise of protection. That gap between expectation and experience is where frustration grows, and leaders feel pressure to speak. The conference became a focal point because it brought private concerns into a public space. Words spoken there did not stay in the room. They traveled through media, social platforms, and community discussions, transforming an internal dialogue into a national conversation. In today's environment, even respectful dissent becomes amplified, and leadership responses are judged just as publicly. Experts on governance often note that traditional institutions survive longest when they adapt without losing their core. Transparency does not weaken authority, it clarifies it. Consultation does not dilute power, it distributes responsibility. These ideas are not foreign to tradition, even if they sound modern. Historically, councils, elders, and collective decision-making were the backbone of legitimacy. At the heart of the tension lies a choice. Moments like this either fracture institutions or reform them. Ignoring the message risks deepening resentment. Overreacting risks appearing insecure. The path forward requires acknowledging concerns without undermining the throne, a delicate balance that defines leadership maturity. Beyond the headlines, there is a common misconception that traditional leaders are ceremonial figures with little real influence. In reality, they shape social order at the most local level. They resolve disputes, allocate land, and interpret custom in daily life. When they feel excluded, the ripple effects travel fast through communities. Communication failures often precede public confrontations. When consultation structures weaken, frustration seeks the next available platform. The conference became that platform not by accident, but by necessity. It was one of the few spaces where leaders felt their voices could no longer be deferred. Watching closely are younger generations, many of whom respect tradition but demand fairness and clarity. For them, legitimacy is not inherited, it is demonstrated. They are less concerned with titles and more with outcomes. How land is managed, how voices are heard, and how power responds to criticism will shape whether tradition feels relevant or distant. There are also political undercurrents rarely spoken about openly. Traditional institutions exist within a broader political ecosystem. Land, influence, and loyalty attract interest from parties and power brokers. When internal governance weakens, external pressure finds entry points. This makes internal cohesion not just cultural, but strategic. All eyes now rest on King Misuzulu's response. Silence would be interpreted as dismissal. Aggression would be seen as insecurity. Measured engagement, however, could reset relationships and redefine his reign. Kings are often remembered less for the crises they inherit and more for how they respond to them. Across the continent, monarchies that have endured longest share a common trait. They listen, they consult, they evolve without abandoning identity. Those that collapse often do so not through overthrow, but through gradual loss of relevance and trust. The Ingonyama Trust itself stands at a crossroads. Pressure for reform, clearer governance, and shared oversight is growing. Whether change comes through internal initiative or external force depends on how seriously current warnings are taken. Institutions that move early shape reform. Those that resist are reshaped by it. What happened at the conference was not chaos. It was conversation breaking through formality. It was tradition speaking to itself in a moment of discomfort. The question now is whether that discomfort will be used as a tool for renewal or ignored, until it becomes something harder to control. In the end, this moment is bigger than one king or one conference. It represents a turning point in how traditional authority navigates a modern constitutional state. Tradition does not disappear by changing. It disappears by refusing to. And the echoes from that hall suggest one clear truth. Tradition is not under attack, it is asking to be heard.